My name is Margaret, and at 72 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. I was wrong. The worst blow came not from a stranger, not from fate, but from the boy I had raised as my own son, my grandson, Theodore. Let me take you back to where it all began. 45 years ago, when my daughter Eleanor was just 19, she made a mistake that would change all our lives. She fell in love with a man who promised her the world but disappeared the moment she told him about the baby growing inside her. Theodore was born into a world where his father was nothing but a name on a birth certificate that was never signed. Eleanor, God bless her soul, tried her best. She worked 2 jobs cleaning offices at night and serving breakfast at Murphy's diner during the day. But raising a child alone in 1979 was no easy task. The weight of responsibility, the judgment from neighbors, the constant struggle to make ends meet, it all became too much. When Theodore was just 5 years old, Eleanor made the hardest decision of her life. She brought him to my doorstep, tears streaming down her face, and said, "Mama, I can't give him what he needs. You can." That night, as I watched my daughter drive away into the darkness, I made a promise to that little boy sleeping in my spare bedroom. I would be his mother, his father, his everything. And for the next 15 years, I kept that promise with every fiber of my being. Those weren't easy years. My husband, Harold, had passed away just 2 years before Theodore came to live with us. I was a widow on a fixed income, but I was determined. I took in sewing work, alterations, and mending. I grew vegetables in my backyard and canned them for winter. I clipped coupons and shopped at thrift stores. Every penny I saved went toward Theodore's future. I remember the nights I would sit at my old Singer's sewing machine, the one Harold had bought me for our 20th anniversary, working by the light of a single lamp to save on electricity. My fingers would ache, my back would throb, but I kept going. Theodore needed school supplies, new shoes, a warm coat for winter. I provided it all, even when it meant skipping my own meals. When Theodore was in middle school, he wanted to join the football team. Equipment alone cost more than I spent on groceries in 2 months. I didn't hesitate. I took on extra sewing work, staying up until 3 in the morning for weeks. But I made sure he had everything he needed. The joy on his face when he scored his first touchdown made every sacrifice worth it. But as Theodore grew older, something changed. The grateful little boy who used to help me in the garden, who would sit beside me during Sunday sermons, who called me Grandma Maggie with such love in his voice, that boy slowly disappeared. In his place grew a young man who seemed embarrassed by our modest home, by my simple clothes, by the way I spoke. High school was when the real distance began. Theodore's friends drove fancy cars, wore expensive clothes, and lived in houses that could fit mine 3 times over. He started spending less time at home, claiming he was studying at friends' houses or participating in after-school activities. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I trusted him because I loved him. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more tales of resilience and family struggles, please hit that subscribe button. Means the world to me to share these experiences with you. The first real shock came during his senior year. I had been saving for his college education since the day he moved in with me. Every month, without fail, I put aside whatever I could spare. It wasn't much, sometimes just $20 or $30, but over the years, it had grown to a respectable sum. I had also started a small account for him with the money I received from selling Harold's tools and fishing equipment. One day, I decided to surprise Theodore with the good news. I sat him down at our kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals, and proudly told him about the college fund I had built for him. I expected joy, gratitude, maybe even a hug. Instead, I got a look of disdain that I'll never forget. Grandma said, his voice cold and distant. Do you know how much college actually costs these days? This won't even cover 1 semester at a decent school. I was stunned. Here I was, having sacrificed for years to help secure his future, and he was criticizing the amount. But I swallowed my hurt and tried to explain that we could apply for financial aid, that there were scholarships available, that we would find a way to make it work. Asterisk, that's when he laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but a bitter, cruel sound that cut through me like a knife. You really don't understand, do you? You think your little sewing projects and coupon clipping are going to get me into a good college? You think I want to be associated with ... double quotes. He gestured around our modest home. ... this. Asterisk, I felt my heart breaking, but I tried to stay calm. Theodore, this home has given you everything you needed. It's filled with love, and asterisk, love doesn't pay for college, he interrupted. Love doesn't buy respect. Do you know what it's like? To have friends who vacation in Europe while I'm stuck here watching you mend other people's clothes. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have them see where I live? Asterisk, the words hit me like physical blows. But the worst was yet to come. Asterisk, you're pathetic, he said, standing up from the table. You're a pathetic old woman living in a pathetic old house, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Asterisk, I sat there in stunned silence as he stormed out of the kitchen. I heard his bedroom door slam, and then 20 minutes later I heard the front door close. He didn't come home that night, or the next. Asterisk, for 3 days, I waited. I called his friend's parents, I contacted the school, I even filed a missing person report with the police. On the 4th day, I received a call from Officer Mitchell, a kind man who had known our family for years. Asterisk, Margaret, he said gently, we found Theodore. He's staying with the Pemberton family. He's asked us to inform you that he's legally old enough to make his own decisions about where he lives. Asterisk, the Pembertons. I knew them. They were one of the wealthiest families in town. Their son Richard was one of Theodore's classmates. I later learned that Theodore had been telling them stories about how I mistreated him, how I was holding him back, how I was too controlling and old-fashioned. They had offered to let him stay with them until graduation. CLA. CL was heartbroken, but I wasn't angry. I was worried about Theodore, about the path he was choosing. I called the Pemberton house several times, but I was told that Theodore didn't want to speak with me. Mrs. Pemberton, in a voice that dripped with false sympathy, told me that Theodore had shared some concerning things about his living situation and that they felt it was best for him to stay with them. Asterisk. Graduation day arrived. I had been looking forward to this moment for years, watching Theodore walk across that stage, seeing him receive his diploma, knowing that I had helped him reach this milestone. I bought a new dress, my first in 3 years, and arrived at the ceremony early to get a good seat. Asterisk. But when Theodore's name was called, when he walked across that stage, he looked right through me. There was no acknowledgement, no smile, no recognition that the woman who had raised him was sitting in the audience, bursting with pride despite everything that had happened. Asterisk, after the ceremony, I approached him. He was surrounded by the Pemberton family, taking pictures and laughing. When he saw me coming, his expression changed. He whispered something to Mrs. Pemberton, who then stepped forward like a shield. Asterisk, I think it's best if you don't disturb Theodore today, she said, her voice cold and dismissive. This is his special day. Asterisk, I raised him, I said quietly, fighting back tears. I just wanted to congratulate him. Asterisk, Theodore finally spoke. You didn't raise me, he said loud enough for the people around us to hear. You housed me. There's a difference. Asterisk. That night, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by 17 years of memories. Theodore's baby pictures still hung on the wall. His school projects were still displayed on the refrigerator. His bedroom remained exactly as he had left it, as if he might come home at any moment. Asterisk. I made a decision that night. I would not chase after someone who didn't want to be found. I would not beg for love from someone who had made it clear that my love meant nothing to him. I would let Theodore go and focus on rebuilding my own life. Asterisk. The next few months were The loneliest of my life. I learned that Theodore had been accepted to a prestigious university. Apparently, the Pembertons had connections and had helped him secure both admission and financial aid. I also learned through the neighborhood gossip network that he had been telling people that I had been holding him back, that I was possessive and manipulative. Asterisk for those who believe in the power of perseverance and want to support stories of overcoming adversity. I encourage you to join our community by subscribing to hear more. Asterisk. But life has a way of teaching lessons when we least expect them. The Pembertons, for all their wealth and connections, had raised a son who was used to getting everything he wanted without consequences. Richard Pemberton was spoiled, entitled, and had a habit of making poor decisions. Unfortunately, Theodore fell right into that lifestyle. Asterisk, I heard through the grapevine that Theodore and Richard had been getting into trouble at college. There were rumors of parties, of academic probation, of behavior that would have horrified the boy I had raised. But I tried not to listen. I told myself that Theodore was an adult now and that his choices were his own. Asterisk, the phone call came on a Tuesday evening in March, almost a year after graduation. I was in my kitchen, preparing a simple dinner, when the phone rang. I almost didn't. Answer. I had learned to be wary of unexpected calls. Asterisk, is this Margaret Henderson? The voice was official, professional. Asterisk, yes, this is she. Asterisk, ma'am, this is Detective Harrison with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about your grandson, Theodore Henderson. Asterisk, my heart stopped. Is he hurt? Is he okay? Asterisk, ma'am, your grandson has been arrested. Been charged with theft and fraud. We understand you're his legal guardian. Asterisk, I had to sit down. The room was spinning. I know. I'm not. He's been living with another family. But yes, he's my grandson. What happened? Asterisk, the detective explained that Theodore and Richard Pemberton had been involved in a scheme where they had been stealing credit card information from other students and making fraudulent purchases. They had been caught when they tried to buy expensive electronics with a stolen card, and the store clerk became suspicious. Asterisk, the charges are serious, ma'am. We're looking at potential jail time, especially since this wasn't their first offense. Apparently, they've been doing this for months. Asterisk, I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, stunned. This wasn't the boy I had raised. This wasn't the child I had sacrificed for, prayed for, loved unconditionally. What had happened to him? Asterisk, the next call came 2 days later. Time it was Theodore. Asterisk, Grandma Maggie. His voice was small, scared. Nothing like the confident young man who had called me pathetic just a year earlier. Asterisk, Theodore. I kept my voice steady, though my heart was racing. Asterisk, I need help. I need a lawyer. The Pembertons, they've cut me off. They said they can't be associated with this kind of scandal. They've kicked me out of their house and told me not to. Contact them again. Asterisk, I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of pain and vindication. What do you need from me, Theodore? Asterisk, I need you to help me. I need you to get me a lawyer. I need you to ... I need you to forgive me. Asterisk, for a moment, I was silent. Part of me wanted to hang up, to let him face the consequences of his choices alone. Part of me wanted to remind him of what he had said to me, of how he had treated me, of how he had abandoned the woman who had given him everything. Asterisk, instead, I asked, where are you staying? Asterisk, I'm staying at a motel. I don't have anywhere else to go. Asterisk, come home. I said simply, we'll figure this out together. When Theodore walked through my front door that evening, he looked like a broken man. Gone was the arrogant teenager who had left a year earlier. In his place stood a young man who had learned some hard lessons about loyalty, about family, about the difference between conditional and unconditional love. Asterisk. He sat at our kitchen table, the same table where he had called me pathetic and cried. Not the angry tears of a frustrated teenager, but the deep, soul-crushing tears of someone who had lost everything and finally understood what truly mattered. Asterisk, I'm sorry. He whispered, "I'm so sorry, Grandma Maggie. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong about you, about this house, about what was important. I was so focused on what I thought I wanted that I couldn't see what I already had." Asterisk, I reached across the table and took his hand. It was bigger now, rougher. But it was still the same hand I had held when he was 5 years old and afraid of the dark. Asterisk, we all make mistakes, Theodore. The question is what we do next. Asterisk, getting Theodore a lawyer depleted most of my savings. The legal fees were astronomical, and even with a public defender, there were costs I hadn't anticipated. I had to take on more sewing work, staying up even later into the night to make ends meet. But I did it without complaint, without making Theodore feel guilty about the financial burden. Asterisk, the lawyer. A kind man named Mr. Peterson was honest about Theodore's situation. "The charges are serious," he explained during our first meeting. "But Theodore is young. This is his first offense, and he's shown genuine remorse. If he's willing to make restitution and perform community service, we might be able to negotiate a plea deal that avoids jail time." Asterisk, Theodore agreed to everything. He got a job at a local restaurant, working double shifts to pay back the money he had stolen. He volunteered at the community center, helping elderly residents with their grocery shopping and household tasks. He attended counseling sessions to address the behavioral issues that had led to his poor choices. Asterisk, but more importantly, he came home. Every night he would sit with me at the kitchen table, telling me about his day, asking about mine. He helped me with the household chores, learned to cook some of my favorite recipes, and slowly began to rebuild the relationship he had nearly destroyed. Asterisk, one evening, about 6 months after his return, Theodore came home with something in his hands. It was a small potted plant of violet, my favorite flower. Asterisk, "I saw this at the grocery store," he said, setting it gently on the kitchen windowsill. "I remembered how you used to grow them in the backyard when I was little. I remembered how you'd cut fresh flowers for the kitchen table every Sunday." Asterisk, I felt tears pricking my eyes. "You remembered that?" Asterisk, "I remember everything, Grandma Maggie. I remember every sacrifice you made for me. I remember every time you went without something so I could have what I needed. I remember every night you stayed up sewing so you could afford to buy me school, supplies or clothes or whatever I wanted. I remember all of it, and I'm ashamed of how I treated you." Asterisk, "The past is the past," I said, touching the soft petals of the violet. "What matters is who we choose to be going forward." Theodore's legal troubles were resolved after 8 months. He received probation, community service, and was required to pay full restitution, which he had already done. More importantly, he had learned lessons that no amount of money or privilege could have taught him. Asterisk, the real surprise came when Theodore announced his plans for the future. Instead of returning to the prestigious university that had expelled him, he had decided to enroll in the local community college. He wanted to study social work, to help other young people who had lost their way. Asterisk, I want to work with kids who are making the same mistakes I made, he explained. I want to help them understand the difference between what's flashy and what's real, between what's impressive and what's important. Asterisk, I was proud of him, prouder than I had ever been when he was getting good grades or scoring touchdowns. He had learned the most important lesson of all. That character is more valuable than status. That family is more precious than wealth. That love is more powerful than pride. Asterisk, Theodore graduated from community college with honors. He went on to complete his bachelor's degree at the State University, paying his own way with a combination of scholarships, grants, and money he earned working part-time jobs. He never asked me for financial help, but he never stopped showing his gratitude for everything I had done for him. Asterisk, on the day he graduated with his social work degree, he walked across that stage and immediately found me in the audience, pointed to me, mouthed "thank you," and blew me a kiss. This time, I was the one crying tears of joy. Asterisk, after graduation, Theodore got a job at a residential facility for at-risk youth. He worked with teenagers who had been in trouble with the law, who had been abandoned by their families, who had lost hope in their futures. He was good at his job because he understood their struggles. It'd been where they were. Asterisk, for those who appreciate stories of redemption and the power of unconditional love. Please consider becoming part of our community by subscribing to hear more uplifting tales. Asterisk, one day, about 3 years after Theodore had returned home, he came to me with a proposition. Asterisk, Grandma Maggie, he said, I've been thinking about this house, about our life together. I know you've been talking about maybe moving to a smaller place, something easier to maintain. Asterisk, I had mentioned it once or twice. The house was getting to be too much for me to keep up with, and my arthritis was making it harder to navigate. The stairs. Asterisk, I have a different idea. Theodore continued. What if we renovated this place together? What if we made it into a home that works for both of us? I can handle the physical maintenance, and you can continue to make it the warm, loving place it's always been. Asterisk, I was touched by the suggestion, but I had concerns. Theodore, you're a young man. Don't you want your own place? Don't you want independence? Asterisk, he smiled. And for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to help me plant vegetables in the backyard. Grandma Maggie, I've learned that independence isn't about living alone. It's about making your own choices. And I choose to be here with you for as long as you'll have me. Asterisk, we spent the next year renovating the house together. Theodore installed new flooring, updated the kitchen, and converted the unused basement into a comfortable apartment for himself. I helped with the decorating, choosing colors and fabrics that would make our home feel fresh and new while still honoring its history. Asterisk, the project brought us even closer together. We worked side by side, planning and painting and laughing. Theodore told me stories about his work, about the kids he was helping, about the difference he was making in their lives. I shared memories of his childhood, of his mother, of the early days when it was just the two of us figuring out how to be a family. Asterisk, one afternoon, while we were painting the kitchen, Theodore stopped and looked at me seriously. Asterisk, Grandma Maggie, I need to tell you something. Need to tell you what I learned from everything that happened. I set down my paintbrush and gave him my full attention. I learned that family isn't about blood, he said. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays when things get hard. It's about who loves you even when you don't deserve it. He paused, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I learned that you don't have to be perfect to be loved, but you do have to be grateful. I learned that respect isn't something you're given because of where you live or what you wear or who your friends are. Respect is something you earn by how you treat people, especially the people who can't do anything for you. I felt my own eyes filling with tears. Most importantly, he continued, I learned that the woman who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself, that woman is not pathetic. She's a hero. You're my hero, Grandma Maggie, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. Asterisk, we hugged then, in that half-painted kitchen, surrounded by the smell of fresh paint and the promise of new beginnings. It was one of the most perfect moments of my life. Asterisk, today, 5 years later, Theodore and I still live in the same house. He's now a supervisor at the residential facility and has helped dozens of young people turn their lives around. He's also engaged to a wonderful young woman named Sarah, who works as a teacher and loves hearing stories about Theodore's childhood. Asterisk, Sarah fits perfectly into our little family. She helps me with my sewing projects, listens to my stories about the old days, and treats me with the kind of respect and affection that makes me feel valued and loved. She and Theodore are planning to get married next spring, and they've asked if they can have the wedding in our backyard, under the apple tree that Harold planted 40 years ago. Asterisk, I couldn't be happier with the way things have turned out. Theodore isn't the same angry, entitled young man who left this house 6 years ago. He's become a man of character, of compassion, of integrity. He's become the kind of person who makes the world a better place simply by being in it. Asterisk. As for the Pembertons, I heard through the grapevine that Richard never recovered from his legal troubles. He dropped out of college, struggled with substance abuse, and eventually moved away from town. His parents, who had once looked down on my modest home and simple lifestyle, learned that money can't buy character, and that enabling bad behavior only leads to more bad behavior. Asterisk, I don't take pleasure in their struggles. But I do take comfort in knowing that the values I tried to instill in Theodore and Misty, hard work, gratitude, and respect for others, proved to be more valuable than any material wealth or social status. Asterisk, sometimes, when I'm sitting in my kitchen in the evening, watching Theodore help Sarah with her lesson plans, or listening to them discuss their wedding plans, I think about that night, 6 years ago, when he called me pathetic. I think about how close we came to losing each other forever, and I'm grateful that love was stronger than pride. That family was more important than status. That redemption was possible even when it seemed impossible. Asterisk, I'm 78 years old now, and I've learned that life's greatest lessons often come wrapped in its greatest challenges. Theodore's betrayal broke my heart, but his return healed it in ways I never could have imagined. He lost his future when he chose wealth over family, but he found his purpose when he chose love over pride. Asterisk, the boy who once called me pathetic now calls me his hero. The young man who was ashamed of our modest home now treasures every memory we've made within these walls. The grandson who thought he was too good for my simple life now understands that the richest life is one filled with love, purpose, and millication, and genuine connections with others. Asterisk, as I finish telling this story, I want to say to anyone who might be listening, never underestimate the power of unconditional love. Never give up on someone you care about, even when they seem to have given up on themselves. And never ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of a life lived with integrity, sacrifice, and love. Asterisk, the future that Theodore thought he had lost when he left this house was nothing compared to the future he found when he came home. And the pathetic old woman he once rejected turned out to be the most important person in his life. Asterisk, sometimes the greatest victories come not from getting what we want, but from holding on to what matters most until the people we love find their way back to us.